You guys ever notice how a good pen makes all the difference when you're writing something?
Mm.
Man.
Mark, you got to save us because me and Josh are off the rails tonight for sure.
Sure are. All right. On this week's episode of the K-12 Tech Talk podcast, we provide a brief update on the status of E-rate in the Supreme Court, and we spend the majority of the episode talking about a listener email where a school just hands out technology like candy. Is that normal, and what strategies can we give you to help you out? Thanks for listening.
Live from the NTP studios, this is the K-12 Tech Talk podcast, episode 194. I think I got that right. I am Josh. Mark is here.
Hey.
And Chris is here.
Hello.
We are, well, two of us are tech directors. One of us is a retired tech director talking about current K-12 technology issues. Mark was at a uber large district. Chris and I are at smaller districts. But the problems are the same, no matter where you go and how big you get. They're just different scopes and size.
I'm still in a district. I'm in the smallest district now. I'm in a district
That's
way
true.
smaller than you guys.
That's true. You went from how many kids? How many did your former district have?
50,000?
And now your current district that you're
350.
That's
period.
that-
There's no.
That's amazing. That is an amazing change.
Yes. Yeah. Problems are the same. Problems are the same.
That's not a full-time gig though, right? Like
No.
Okay.
I've got a bunch of different things, but that's like my passion project. So I'm having fun with that one.
You're still able to take your dog for walks during the day and have dinner on the table when your wife gets home.
Yeah.
What was for dinner tonight, Mark? What'd you make?
Cold pizza. Also, did you just hear my dog bark in the background too?
I did. Yeah, the discipline's going well. The doggy day camp is going well, Mark.
Wow.
Yeah. He'd like to talk about the frequency of walks if we have some time with him.
Well, it's because those birds attack him.
Yep.
Anything exciting going on, fellas?
No,
Okay, it's Christmas season. Things are
I'm ready for it.
inherently calming down. End of semester finals are coming up.
I'll tell you. Here's a quick story for you. Domino's Pizza, which is not a proud sponsor, nor will they ever be a sponsor of the K-12 Tech Talk podcast.
Have you asked them to be a sponsor?
I don't want them.
Oh,
I'll go for some Pizza Hut or some Emos or whatever else. But so Domino's Pizza, I do two student-led technology programs here at my school district, one for middle school, one for high school. And then I think we've unpacked this before. I do an elementary after school. It's like robotics and coding club. So Christmas time, we have 3 Christmas parties to chug through. One for middle school techs, one for high school techs, one for the elementary. I do a Domino's online order every year. I can do some pretty good pizza math. Here's a trick. You take your kids, you multiply it by 2, you divide it by 8. And if you're kind of heavy on the boys, you might round up a couple pies. But that's pretty good pizza math to cover students.
wait. So if I have 10 kids, I'm multiplying by 2.
2 slices, assuming it's a pretty good guy-girl ratio.
20 slices.
Then divide it by 8, which is a typical size of a pie.
So 20 divided by 8. Mark, you got Jeopardy music or anything here? Do. Quick in-head math here. I'm coming up with 57 pizzas.
That's not right.
Huh.
That's not right at all.
What?
So you'll
How
use your
bad are you at math?
use your calculator app, and then you may or may not round up a pie, depending upon what you get to, and if you're heavy on the guys, because guys tend to eat a little bit more pizza.
I redid the math. 432.
It doesn't matter. Anyways, I place these online orders. I do 3 in a row to get the thing done. Okay, I want my Domino's points. Long story short, pizza party number 1 goes to the address that was pizza party number 3. Okay, it's a pizza party fiasco.
So their technology sucks.
Time is limited. I end up troubleshooting, and then I talk to the guy. He's like, "Yeah, you put this address." I'm like, "No, I put this address in." He's like, "No, you put this address in." So we change it. I'm like, "Okay, where are you going tomorrow?" He says a different address. We update that. He's arguing with me on the phone. You put this address in. I'm like, "No, I put that address in." We do that for a while. I'm like, "Okay, you're coming tomorrow. What address are you coming to?" And he says the wrong address again. Long story short, because I know that Mark likes long stories.
Too late.
We discovered
Yeah, way too late
that,
for that.
Domino's has a tech issue, at least in my area on their computer, where the last order you placed updates the address of the previous orders in the queue.
Wow.
Pizza fiasco. It was a great story to tell my tech kids. That's my story. Domino's Pizza.
Wow.
That's
That
what I
is-
had going on. That's why I'm a little bit salty tonight.
Hey,
Yeah, no, it's a great story to tell the kids. I don't know about a great story to tell on the podcast.
Yeah, I
Pizza
think
Matt.
we went
That's
up.
that's the takeaway.
No pizza tech. I mean, I'm not. It's kind of non sequitur, but it was about K-12 technology department. So
You asked what was going on. 3 pizza
I
parties.
get it.
I'm pizzaed out.
I get it. It's fine.
No longer a fan of Domino's.
No judgment here, man. I spent the beginning part of the week in DC. I hadn't been to DC in probably 40 years. It was cool. Traffic is horrible. I almost, well, I won't say this. That's a non-podcast safe
At one
story.
point, you sent us a picture of a Apple tag following you. And
Yeah, I had 3 alerts on my phone that there were Apple tags following me, and I think the Russians were trying to get me.
I wasn't going to say a country.
Yeah, I think it was the Russians.
Hey, speaking of privacy here, should we talk about our big change?
I think we
behind the
should.
scenes? Yeah. So
Because
last
of
week,
because of that moment.
yeah. So last week we talked on the podcast about the FCC's warnings, or a bunch of FBI CISAs of warnings about
Yeah.
communication systems.
They call that a co-stamped release. I found that out this week.
Yes. A lot of concerns, and everybody should be concerned about the Chinese hackers in our communication systems. The 3 of us, we've officially moved to WhatsApp.
Yeah,
We
so
did it.
don't
We're very
Don't-
safe.
don't be hacking my SMS messages expecting to find podcast secrets.
That's
Like
right.
Josh was sending like I was cracking a joke in the group text, and Josh was like, "Communications must stop here." And I thought he was joking, and he was like, "Not secure."
That's right.
And then he sent the tags following him,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then we legit moved to WhatsApp.
Yeah. That and part of my problem was, you guys know, I think I have a touch of OCD, and I mean, it's no secret I have anxiety, pretty significant anxiety. I made the mistake of binging a good part of Killing Eve last weekend before I left for DC, and Assassins and my anxiety, that just was not a smart idea. So yeah, I was for sure thought I was being followed by the Russians.
Yeah, here's the quotes. "We should probably move this to secure method of communications."
Yep. See?
Then he said, "I'm not joking."
Yeah.
And then he said, "No discussions today." And then he showed the tags.
Yeah.
Wow. So
Meanwhile-
WhatsApp. We're all about it.
WhatsApp or Signal, go there.
All right. Should we
Chris-
switch over to the news?
Well, let
I
him
think
hit some
so, Mark.
sponsors.
We got
He's
some
got
sponsors,
it's a
yeah.
NASCAR episode, so
Yes, this next segment brought to you by HPE Aruba. You can email our friend Jeff Cobb, COBB at HPE.com. I'll put his email address in the podcast description. They hang out with us at the Midwest Tech Talk conferences. We have both of those listed now for 2025. You can go to MidwestTechTalk.com and join Attendee Plus to attend both. March 6th through 7th, we're going to be in Columbia, Missouri for our security symposium, 2 days of all cybersecurity. And then July 21st and 22nd, we'll be back at the Lake of the Ozarks in Missouri as well for the Midwest Tech Talk Technical Conference. HPE Aruba will be there.
you guys ever notice how a good pen makes all the difference when you're writing something? Man.
Mark, you got to save us because me and Josh are off the rails tonight for sure.
Sure are. All right, let's go on to the news. It's a story we've talked quite a lot about, the Supreme Court E-rate situation. We have had some little bit of indication as to when the U.S. Supreme Court is going to be taking that up. So we should be finding out a little bit more in March or April about the future of E-rate. Now that, of course, will be after the Trump administration takes over, and there's going to be a lot of changes within a number of departments. But I do not anticipate any of those changes will really impact the Supreme Court's decision. So we'll see what's going to happen, March or April.
Is that when they hear arguments or?
When the oral arguments begin, yes.
Okay. So decision still likely won't happen until the end of term, right?
No, but I think you'll start to get some early indications. They usually
Yeah.
have a little hint in terms of
During
say-
questioning.
Yeah, based on some of the questions that have come out there. So
Yeah.
we'll see. We'll see what happens there.
We I talked about this again we had our admin meeting today actually, and this topic, my superintendent brought this topic up because I've been keeping her informed on it. So if you are not having this discussion with your superintendent or your leadership team or at least your CFO to, hey, just on your radar, this 50-50 at this point, maybe leaning a little bit in our favor of it being held up or upheld, just because of the way that they address the lawyers. It is definitely worth bringing and making your CFO's attention on this, because it is definitely a real thing.
Yeah. As well as, if you have any advocates or political allies in different agencies, especially at the national level, if you
Absolutely
have contacts who are friends with your state reps, or if you are friends with your state reps, very important for them to understand just how important this is. So
yeah, if you live in Rand Paul's district, you need to get on
Hit
the
him
phone
up.
with him. Yeah.
Yep.
I know we said before, practical thing is send your superintendent these email articles, these news articles as you get them.
Yeah.
Just keep those folks in the loop.
Yeah, don't send him the podcast by any means.
No,
Not this one.
No, I've been sending Josh the superintendent podcast episode. So
Hey,
okay,
they're a subscriber, I know.
all right. Let's go to another national story. The U.S. Department of Education has come out with some guidance on student cell phone usage.
I saw this last week.
And do you know what they say?
Everybody needs to make a plan.
Yeah. You all need to make your plan. Here's
Oh
some
wow,
guidance.
give it back to the states?
That's right.
And the local authorities?
That's
that's
right.
That's what the WWF department's been doing for a while. Are we renaming that department the WWF
Wait, we're not getting
department?
political. I
We're not.
apologize.
No politics.
I apologize.
I did call it the WWF department in our admin team today.
Hey, drop it.
It's fact, man.
Okay.
Stone Cold Steve Austin.
So anyways, we'll link the U.S. Department of Education's guidance in our show notes. However, most of the guidance is really directed at states. So it's basically the national levels calling on states. You need to take this topic of conversation up. I think subtly that's their way of saying we're not going to address this at the national level, so you guys need to. So
Did The Rock sign it?
no, but Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be the enforcer. Yeah.
Yep.
I
All
just saw at our school we had cracked down more on cell phone stuff. We've had a strict cell phone policy in place for a long time, but
nobody
not really
enforces
followed.
it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's the definition of strict.
Yeah. Right. So I saw an email with the principal that it sounds like nearing Christmas break, it's been lax again.
What?
So he put down like, hey, let's finish strong.
I've heard of a couple schools going with the yonder pouches recently. Good, bad, and different. I don't know what.
Yeah, I don't know why we need a pouch.
I don't either.
Why do we have to have some a physical and a technology thing again?
God. It comes down to students have a hard time. It's an addiction. Mark, the video is going nowhere.
I think. Hold on, time out, and we're gonna plug this segment. This next segment, it's called Josh's Quick Story About His Armpits, is brought to you by VIZOR. VIZOR has been hanging out with us for all of 2024, and they've actually signed on for 2025 as well. We love VIZOR. They have some changes to their additions, to their pricing. VIZOR's IT and Facilities Help Desk is now part of their standard. VIZOR,
Yeah,
VIZOR. Their IT and Facilities Help Desk is now a part of their standard edition. They can help you with your IT asset management, with your IT help desk. And they've even changed pricing to give you an unlimited number of assets, of devices, of agents, of tickets. So check out VIZOR. You can get a free K-12 Tech Talk hoodie as well. Go to VIZOR, that's VIZOR.cloud/K-12 Tech Talk. And now this segment is called Josh's Pits.
Can I
Josh,
finish?
you gave us a weird flashing of skin.
Can I finish
just a second ago? Yeah, go ahead.
My comment about the cell phone thing? Cell phone. I think cell phone addiction is real, and I think that's why pouches are necessary at this point. It's like with any addiction, if you give somebody addicted to crack you give them a piece of crack and put it in their pocket, they're going to continue to reach for it because they're addicted to it. Same thing with a cell phone. If the cell phone's in their pocket and they're addicted to it, they're going to keep getting it out and looking at notifications. I think just having a policy of it should be kept out of sight, it should be kept in your backpack, that's a fine policy, but you have to be willing to enforce that with classroom management.
I agree.
Yeah.
And that's where the pouch thing comes into play.
I don't think Josh knows how crack works, but okay.
I mean,
Put it in your pocket. And...
where else do you? I mean, that's not how you smoke it, but where else are you going to carry it?
Are you talking about Christmas crack, the candy?
Yes, Chris. Yes, it gets kind of melty when you keep it in your pocket. I know.
Anyway, tell us about your pits really quick.
I think the travel deodorant I used this week, I'm allergic to it, I think.
Yeah, keep it up, Josh. I'm cutting this out.
What? It's fine, Mark. It's fine. I have no problem. I'm an open book.
And an open pit.
Yeah. Okay. Next, Chris, do you have any thoughts on Chromebook or
I don't want to use I currently don't want to use Yonder pouches or any pouches or any technology to fix a technology issue that I think could be prevented with a policy that's just followed,
but it
visibly seen. Teacher tells kid to put the thing away, kind of thing.
Mark, put on your former teacher hat.
Yeah.
Is there that big of a difference with a policy saying you have to enforce kids keeping their phones put away and the pouch? I mean, the pouch makes it easier because then you're not the bad guy. The pouch is the bad guy.
Exactly. I think this whole cell phone conversation, and if I had a little bit of a tint of a frustration with the USDOE's calls for states to make a policy, it's because every single person who's in a position to handle this situation is directing somebody else to handle it for them because they do not want to be the one who does this. And as such, I don't believe that we should put this on the shoulders of teachers. I think that there needs to be a higher level decision so that teachers can focus on teaching and not have to constantly stop teaching and tell little Johnny to put his cell phone away. I think it needs to be a policy. If you're going to get rid of cell phones, then you get rid of them. I think there does need to be a policy, but Yonder is that enforcement so that it doesn't fall back on the teacher's shoulders.
Yeah, same difference as the teacher collecting the phones at the beginning of every hour. I would never ask a teacher to be responsible for $30,000 worth of technology
Right.
that the district doesn't own.
Well, let's go down to the state level. The next news story is coming out of my neck of the woods in Rhode Island in school. And Josh, I'm going to call you out on this one. I didn't tell you ahead of time here, but Rhode Island as a state is going to be the first state to adopt a malicious domain protection service, or what is it called? PDNS. From MS ISAC. Josh, can you tell us exactly what this is and what's going on with Rhode Island?
Why, yes, I can, Mark. So MSISAC has a free service for all K-12, or for all SLTTs, state, local, tribal, territorial. Their MDBR service. It is a malicious domain name blocking service. On the back end, they use Akamai to block known malicious domains. And it is a completely free service. You can have it set up once you communicate with MSISAC SOC or CI, Center for Internet Security SOC, and they turn on your account or allow your DNS queries. You can literally have it up and running in about 15 minutes because all you have to do is point your DNS pointers or your DNS servers at the addresses that MSISAC gives you, and you're in business. It's immediately working. You're blocking known malicious domain sites. MDBR is what it's called from MSISAC. CISA also has a product called PDNS, Protective DNS. But I think at this point you have to be invited to that from CISA. But MSISAC, it's open to all members, free. It's actually something that we talked about at our meetings this week in DC. So if you are not using the MDBR service, you need to be using it. You get cool reports every week of total DNS queries, how many blocked queries that it hit, and then some folks here in Missouri, we have a competition on how many people or how many block sites, yada yada yada. Again, it's free. Yes, Chris.
Let me ask you this.
Ask me a
So
question.
if I have a firewall that I'm paying for some DNS stuff similar to this. So
Yeah.
it's a part of my firewall.
Okay.
Do you still do you have a preference here? Do you still point your DNS to something like this, or do you think it's cool to not double layer it and just stick with like a Google DNS? Like, what do you think? Or do you think I end up ditching my firewall paid
I
for stuff that
Yeah,
has it built in?
I would ditch your paid for stuff and go with this because it's free, and then use that money for something else. I mean, it's managed by MSISAC and the Center for Internet Security, and it's based on Akamai, so they can handle the load of DNS queries from however many DNS queries are hitting it from across the country. That's not a concern. Response isn't a concern. I've had, I think, since I've been using it, man, I've been using it, I think 3 years, 4 years, right after COVID. I think I've had to contact the SOC twice on a misclassified site that gets blocked that shouldn't be blocked, and it was resolved quickly. That happens super rare.
Do you do you get a message on this? Like, does the
You,
user get a message that says that, or do
yes,
you, or what?
yeah. There's a screen. It's like a redirect. Um, yeah, highly successful. And whether you think you have malicious queries happening or not, you should use this. And I think you will be surprised that you probably do have malicious queries hitting.
Right.
Um, so yeah, Chris, you don't use MDBR?
No, but the firewall that I use, I'm using a paid
Sonic Wall.
service with it, not SonicWall, using a paid service with it that's doing a layer like this.
Huh.
But
I
again,
would
like you're saying, that's the debate is that you either keep that layer in there, but you also point your DNS to this, or you save
I
yourself some money.
I would point your DNS at it and get rid of that paid service because what you don't need to pay for it at that point.
I like it.
And that was, that's been a initiative from the Office of the National Cyber Director, ONCD, Harry Coker and those guys, about trying to really, really push K-12s. Like Mark said, that the entire state of Rhode Island, of course, that's probably like what, Mark, 15 districts?
Yeah, it's very small. I think it was 130 or so thousand students across the state.
So I emailed Kathy at Mornet today and said, Kathy, this would be a great project. So yeah, the barrier is super low to get in. There's really not a reason not. There's not a reason. There are no reasons to not do it. That's really weird. Um, yeah, do it. Contact MSISAC. If you're not an MSISAC member and you're a public K-12 district, you can be a member for free. Join. There's no reason not to join. You get a whole host of free services available to you immediately, including SOC services, and then this awesome MDBR service, among other things. Super easy to set up. Do it. Do it. Do it. Do it. Free.
All right, a little bit of a pivot here, talking about cybersecurity now, going on to risk. Have you ever heard of Moody's? Is that a
Yes.
phrase? Yeah, Moody's
Yeah.
ratings.
The
They
financial
are,
thing, right?
yeah. So Moody's
Mm.
very influential in their ratings and their evaluation, their research on different sectors.
Bond ratings, right?
Yeah, and they are concerned about education, and they have upped the risk level of education this year. Previously, education, the sector of K-12 was rated as a moderate for risk. They're
From
now at a high rating, which is still below a number of major sectors, including the automobile, finance company, mass transit. So the risk rating of education, while it's growing, it is still not as high as some of these other sectors that we're seeing.
from
Um,
from what standpoint though? Like what type of risk?
So yeah, so two major reasons for this risk increasing in terms of their risk for being a victim of cyber attack. The first is this growing extensive digital footprint. So essentially,
Okay.
since COVID, schools have bought and just gone completely digital, completely cloud based with so many different things, and has made them a whole lot more vulnerable to cyber attack. That growth in their digital footprint has not matched our growth in preventative measures and cybersecurity measures. So
Sure.
they're upping our risk rating. They may not sound like a big deal at the surface to go from medium to high risk. What that does mean, though, is insurance rates are going to slowly creep up as well, if not quickly creep up, because Moody's is very, very influential in a lot of cybersecurity companies and how they are rating and grading your risk. So, unfortunately for us, that means that we are going to start to see some of our costs rise and go towards insurance.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yep. The last story I have is not specifically K-12 technology, but it's connected to some of the topics that we've talked about in recent weeks. So if you remember correctly, we've talked about some parents going after some of the major ed tech companies and actually suing the ed tech companies for data privacy stuff.
Yeah.
Parents have now turned their sights against the curriculum manufacturers. So there's a
Oh.
lawsuit, big lawsuit out of Massachusetts, where there's a lawsuit targeting Fountas and Pinnell and Lucy Calkins, famous ELA curriculum providers, around flawed, how do you say this, flawed methodology for teaching students how to read. It's a pretty explosive case
Huh.
in the ELA kind of sector. But the interesting thing, though, about this, and I did hear a couple of other comments around this, parents are now skipping over school districts for their lawsuits. They're now going directly after these service providers. So
Huh.
we're seeing that with ed tech providers and data privacy. We're now seeing that on the curriculum side. Parents are saying enough is enough. You're providing flawed materials and flawed approaches to school districts. We're going to hold you accountable instead of the school district as the intermediary. So I think this is a fascinating shift if more and more parents start to hold school providers more accountable than the actual schools themselves who made the decisions to use these tools. So interesting. I'm going to be very curious to see how some of these lawsuits go, because depending on how these lawsuits fall, then that's either going to shut the door or open the floodgates to parents and class action lawsuits against ed tech providers, against curriculum providers, and school service providers as a whole. So
That is interesting that they're bypassing schools because during COVID, it was a popular thing for parents to come in and raise heck with districts over curriculum delivery and
yeah,
topics. It's interesting that that's kind of moved directly to the provider or the creator of that.
yeah. Yeah, so you've got two parents that are suing. They're targeting. It's a lawsuit targeting Lucy Calkins and Fountas and Pinnell due to failed reading methodologies.
I can't say I've heard of that vendor, but that doesn't mean anything.
If you're a teacher, you've heard of them.
Okay, I'm not a teacher. What else you got?
That's it. Those are the big stories for this week. A lot of stuff that we're going to be keeping a close eye on in terms of the E-rate stuff. But that's it for now. It's getting kind of quiet as we get towards Christmas season.
Yeah,
so.
Christmas time. Everybody gets
We're ready.
quiet. All right, Chris, NASCAR time.
Yeah, be sure to check out Verkada. Go to Verkada.com. They have some great indoor and outdoor cameras that can help you with your security system in your school district. They pride themselves on not a whole lot of training needed. What was that?
They got some AI stuff built into their
They do
product,
have
don't
some
they?
AI stuff built in. So if you have some cameras that need to get replaced, you're going to move to a new security system, check out Verkada, Verkada.com. Mention the K-12 Tech Talk podcast when you do that.
All right, our big topic for the night. Which one of you guys wants to introduce that?
Well, should we? It's actually starting from a listener email.
Yeah,
Chris,
yeah,
Chris, do you want to
listener
read the first part here?
I do. So this is from listener Ryan, and it's a two-parter. So I'm going to chug through the first half. We'll discuss it, and then we'll dig into the second half. It says, hey, guys, has stumbled upon the podcast, loves it, going back into the archives from over a year ago. And then he starts to unpack himself. So he says he inherited a mess of a department where not only did the previous IT manager just let teachers and admin get whatever programs they wanted, but he also had a Candyman mentality when it came to handing out assets. No tagging, no tracking, just that's broken. And if there was any extras, they got him, or he says, let them jump on Amazon. This led to the IT department needing to be responsible for giving out headphones to every single student and to make sure that teachers always had a class set working at all times. So, first question, he says, as you can imagine, this is a huge hole in my bucket when it comes to overall tech budget. On top of that, he's refreshing Chromebooks all the time as well, bulbs and projectors. So his first question is, from what he just said, is that normal? Should he be worried about headsets and all that?
That's normal. Move on. Next question.
Oh my goodness, Mark. we kind of classify headsets and other cheap items like that as consumables.
Hmm.
We're not tracking that as an asset. That's a 99 cent set of earbuds or headset. Like it's not worth my time tracking. Does that make sense? Am I wrong?
Yeah, so he took this one. If you go earlier in the question, he took it even farther and said that, teachers and admins get anything that they want in terms of programs. So you've got software and you've got physical assets. So maybe
Yes.
we break that into two, right? Because the software, you could have free stuff, and you've got a mentality of I can just dump all data that I want into some free program or pay program. So I'd say, sorry, to go back to my short answer, unfortunately, that type of behavior is not abnormal.
No,
And that
no.
there are a lot of districts going through the same challenge of everybody getting whatever they want at any time and kind of no checks and balances. And with software stuff, that's very dangerous. You don't know what's being brought into your environment. You don't know where your data is going. And then with hardware, as you discussed in the question, that's expensive if you're going through lots and lots of headphones and devices and things like that. So I to answer the first part of the question, I would say it sounds like this is a very extreme case, but that type of behavior is not abnormal to a certain extent in every district.
Uh, the headphones thing again, consumable, the software thing, website thing, application thing. I take the stance that I have certain requirements an application must meet or a website
Hmm.
must meet or whatever. Data privacy is the big one there. Interfacing with Clever is another one for rostering. Like it needs to do those two things. And data privacy is a hard stop. They have to execute a data privacy agreement.
Mhm.
Beyond those two things, it's really not my call to judge whether something is educationally valid in a building or a classroom. That's the principal's decision, and maybe your curriculum director in central office or your superintendent. To me, the IT director, that's out of our scope of responsibility. The data privacy thing, that's in your scope. The data integration thing, that's in your scope. Outside of that, your job is to make that work. Thoughts?
I want to step on your toes just a little bit with that.
Okay, I have big feet. That's the
So,
problem.
on the software side, I agree that we're not necessarily in a role to evaluate curriculum and the efficacy of different online programs. But one of the things that does land on our plate quite a lot is leadership or academics or instructional folks saying our systems don't talk to each other.
Sure.
Or, why isn't the data from this assessment program in this application as well?
Yeah.
And that is viewed as our problem. And unfortunately, it's very hard for us to explain that the problem starts at procurement. That if you want those things to talk to each other, and that's I hate that phrase, but like I have to use that in this context.
Yeah.
If you want your systems to be a true ecosystem where you have interoperability, you have data exchanges between platforms, an action you take in one system is reflected in another. If you want that in your ecosystem, and we all do, then IT does need to have a seat at the decision-making table for those particular things.
Agree.
So I do think that, IT directors and IT staff, we should take a little bit more of a heavy hand in the onboarding side of things, more so than just data privacy. I think we really need to start to push the conversation of interoperability. And so kind of going back and stealing a phrase from the listener email, this Candyman mentality of just go take whatever you want or do whatever you want. We've got to get out of that for interoperability purposes, for data privacy purposes, as you mentioned, Josh, and first and foremost, data security.
I mean, that's why I mentioned Clever. And in my district, it's typically been a one-way communication from campus to Clever to whatever the application is for rostering purposes.
Yeah.
We have very few applications that write back to campus. Really, the main one being Google Classroom through the integration with campus, and one other one. We really don't have any applications that automatically write back to campus. But I completely agree with you, Mark. If that is a requirement or a litmus test for buying a product, absolutely IT has to be involved in that discussion.
All right, so I tell me if I'm right on this. So is this normal? I think we're saying with software, no, this is not normal. Do not hand out software like candy. Get a good grip on that. Uh, is it
I,
normal with maybe headphones? That's a whole other story to unpack where we're leaning, yes, that needs to be budgeted for.
I I think you're getting rather specific with the headphone example. I would say
Yeah.
consumables. I have no problem replacing a keyboard, handing out a mouse. I like those are things that we have a ton of. I'm not asset tracking them because they're $3. Get over it. Applications, you need to have a seat at the table. You need to have your grading rubric. But beyond that, it's really when it comes down to instructional, it's an instructional decision once it meets your requirements. Like Mark said, with data interoperability, yada
Yeah.
yada.
I do think though with hardware, I think you need to break out your categories. I mean, headphones, I agree. You know, we had a whole bunch of cheap headphones in my last district, and when somebody asked for me, here you go, take them. I'm going to walk away.
Right.
I'm going to count this as just part of the business. And you are talking about tools that are a student's way of learning, and
Yeah,
so it's like, well, we're not going to take the bus away because you missed it too many times. Although that is a policy in districts, but yeah, I think to a certain extent. But the hardware side of things, I wouldn't. I would take it a little bit back, a little bit from the wide open mentality to say, I think anything that has a hard drive, anything that could potentially
sure.
have data, anything that is connected to your network, to a certain extent, needs to have some sort of inventory in place, so that if that asset is lost and there is a spreadsheet on that device,
Yeah,
you have the way to disable it. You have a way of reporting that's been lost or stolen. Because what you've just described of people just kind of handing stuff out and not knowing, unfortunately, you're going to get a call from somebody in California who says, "I've got a laptop and it's got this spreadsheet on it. What do you want me to do
yeah,
with it?" And
yeah,
you're not going to know that that was yours. So
yeah.
you've got to be really, really careful with network connected assets.
And,
So
and to
go ahead, Josh.
I was just going to say that comes down to whatever your district's threshold is for tracking assets. You likely have a board policy that says at what level of a spend is that asset tracked. And like Mark said, a really good litmus test for that is, does it have a hard drive? Is it able to store data locally on it? If it is, you need to track that device. Monitors, they're kind of in that gray area of yes, they need to be tracked because they're fixed assets sitting on a desk, but they don't have data stored on them. Whatever. Go ahead, Chris.
So he had a second part to this, but I think we've kind of unpacked this already. But because he said, if I'm not crazy, how should I start to talk to my school's leadership that kids should be responsible for their headphones? But then he talked about too, and this is what I think we can touch on. He said their school's 100% free lunch. So for a lot of finance reasons, over 80% of their kids are at risk, right? So he doesn't charge for fees. He doesn't charge for damages. He doesn't charge for repairs. So I think we can shift this a little bit. Like, so knowing what we just said, like what kind of conversations or what can we recommend to listener Ryan about next steps? Who should he be talking to? What do we think he should do?
Yeah.
Given that we just kind of told him headphone budget, figure it out,
Yeah.
lock it down. What do you guys think?
I think the discussion comes in on the application side. Not it doesn't sound like on the hardware side. I don't think he's losing Chromebooks hand over fist and handing out Chromebooks like candy. I could be wrong there. Headphones, I don't care. Mark, what do you think?
I mean, from reading through this email, we might be, underselling this. He might be losing quite a lot of money. And the other thing is we do have a fiscal responsibility. So here's how I would approach this with headphones or Chromebooks or laptops, whatever it is you have. Set a budget. It sounds like there is no budget. They just spend and hope ends meet at the end of the year. Set a budget, and maybe that is just to kind of go with last year. What did you spend on headphones? What did you spend on device repairs? That kind of stuff, and set that as your threshold, and then kind of work yourself back and say, okay, this is what we're spending on these devices or these assets for the year, and bring that to your superintendent, bring that to the school principal or whatnot, or your CFO or budget director, and say, I'd like to cap this particular asset, whether it's Chromebooks or Chromebook parts or headphones at this dollar amount based on the data from last year. And say, I could also use your help in enforcement to keep us into this budget, because if we can stay in this budget, I can then use the money for other things. But right now, he can't plan for anything because he doesn't know how much he's going to lose. And he doesn't know how much he's going to spend. So how can you plan for additional projects and systems if you have no idea how much you're going to need to spend on headphones and Chromebooks and all that kind of stuff? So I would take it from the fiscal perspective and say, I'd like to set a good budget for the department. I want this team to operate under routines and budgets, and I want you to have predictable costs associated with these things. In order to do so, I've got to get out of this like cash grab mentality, and I need to set expectations. I'm going to set a class set of headphones and devices for each class, give them a 5, 10, 15% buffer, whatever it is. And then after that, they need to go to a principal or somebody for, and describe the rationale. That alone is going to stop the bleed.
Yeah.
I think teachers and students just want to know that there is an expectation, there's a policy, there's a procedure, and they'll work their way towards that. Maybe if not the first year, they'll at least understand that you're trying to be more fiscally responsible and conscious of your assets.
This is reminding me when we first went 1-to-1, I guess even at secondary, but in particular at the elementary, we had it on our school supply list for every kid to bring their own set of headphones. And then we just would provide headphones to those that didn't bring. And there was a dollar amount that was associated with that. But it reached a point where I actually went to my super and we figured out, hey, we need this many headphones for every single kid. And he bumped my budget up with that consumable thought that Josh mentioned, where I just knew every year I'm buying this many headphones for this building. And the teachers know that. They know that we bought this many headphones. So they even know you have the teacher that might be kind of the one that's always taking the headphones and the one that's very frugal. Well, that settles it out because the building knew that there's this many headphones every single year, that enough headphones were bought for every single student. So if we run out, there's a bigger picture problem happening. We even did, and maybe this is something, Ryan, you can chase. We did a headphone committee where we bought like 5, 6 different headphones and landed on the particular one and had cost as a factor in there. Mm-hmm. And again, that it wasn't like a real formal committee, but it let us figure out this is what the teachers say they need, and this is how much this is probably going to be every single year.
Would you put the headphone committee on your resume if you served on it? No.
Not my proudest moment, but
headphones. I mean, even though you're talking about a buck or two for some of the really cheap headphones out there, that's the starting point for managing and controlling your costs in other things, the other consumable stuff. So yes. So going all the way back to his first question, is this normal? Yes. Should it be? No. And it's a challenge that all of us in this sector are really dealing with, especially after COVID, how people have just devalued things across the board, and they're just throwing different ed tech tools into classrooms without thought or care. Is it normal? Slightly, yes. Should it be? No. And there are definitely ways that you can start to put in routines, start to put in budgets, and really take, your district, your community better, but I would take the fiscal approach of I just want to be able to put more money into learning tools or more instructional materials and not broken stuff.
Yep.
I think data is king on a lot of that too. If you can talk about how much money you're spending and how many headphones, whatever you're giving out, put some numbers to it.
Sounds like it doesn't have that because the previous person they had 0 tagging, 0 tracking. Just hand them a new one. So maybe year one is just get some level data in place.
They're not a sponsor right now.
It could be, though. Fortinet is a sponsor. You can email fortinetpodcast@fortinet.com for all your Forta products and services.
Who do I email?
Chris Illingworth with an I, but you just email fortinetpodcast@fortinet.com and say, hey, Chris.
All right. What else you guys got?
That's it.
That's it. Chris, are we out of NASCAR sponsors tonight?
We got Extreme too. You can email Dominic Mayer, dmayer@extremenetworks.com. Another proud sponsor of the K-12 Tech Talk podcast of Midwest Tech Talk. We like Dominic a lot as well. I wonder how much of this Mark is going to edit.
A lot.
He was scolding us at the beginning.
I know. I don't have a problem with anything we said.
Scolding.
No, it was the bodily sounds that Josh made throughout
I didn't
the
make any
episode.
bodily sounds.
And this is where I'm going to edit in Josh's belch into the...
I didn't burp.
Or sorry, his cough or something.
Oh, I did cough. You're right.
Yeah.
There was
sorry.
the pizza story. Mark
Yeah.
was giving me a look.
Yeah.
There was when you showed your armpits.
Mark,
There
Chris,
was you
this is an
making-
audio
there was-
podcast.
There was you making some noise that shouldn't be
I
made.
coughed. My God.
And then when
coughed.
I hit this microphone a couple of seconds ago, I thought I was going to get yelled at.
All right, we're going to leave this one uncensored.
Besides, you got to take that part out where I really fumble my words.
Got it. Next week is probably our last episode of the new year. So
Oh,
should we do our-
man.
Not the new year, the current year.
the current year, sorry. Should we do our recap?
All day.
Sure.
Recap of the year. And I was listening to the last couple of years of predictions, and I'm going to have to pull some of your predictions up
Uh-oh.
and see if you guys can comment on it.
Uh-oh.
That'd be fun.
Yeah.
I feel like he's gonna this is gonna be I don't know.
Mark's
feel-
right. You guys were wrong.
Exactly. That's how this is gonna go.
No. I've got some fun ones of Chris's predictions as to how his Infinite Campus implementation.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. The one that they had to delay. Oh, sorry. Never mind.
And then there's
Yeah.
the one of Josh saying how perfect his Infinite Campus data was. So, anyways, we'll save that for next week.
It was. All right. Thanks for shoot us an email, k12techtalk@gmail.com. We've seen an uptick in listeners this week. We appreciate it if you're sharing with your friends. If you're not sharing with your friends, why not? This stuff is just pure comedy gold, content gold. And you learn about cool things like the protective DNS service from MSISAC. So share us with your friends, share us with your meeting groups, share us with your enemies, and we'll see you next week.
We might not be the same. You share the same pain that I do.
The views and opinions expressed on the K-12 Tech Talk podcast are the personal opinions of Josh, Chris, and Mark, and do not represent the views or opinions of our sponsors or other organizations that we're affiliated with. The material and information presented here is for general information and entertainment purposes only. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.
We were buying words about the